Hey guys, here's another episode of Project Black T-shirt. I'm Adam Caesar. Today we're going to be talking about The Ballad of Black Tom by LaValle, and I'm going to make a terrible, terrible confession, so keep watching. Alright, I know I said this was going to be a mainly movie review show, but for the second time in a month, I'm going to lead with a book review and then recommend a movie based on that. And that book is Victor LaValle's The Ballad of Black Tom. I have the ebook, but I think there is a paperback edition of this. It's a quick little novella. I don't know how many pages it turns out to be, but it's something you can read in 1 to 2 to 3 sittings, depending on how a hardcore reader you are. Very quick read. Really kind of knocked my socks off. That's why I wanted to make this video and talk about it. But it also lends itself to one other thing. So before I talk about the book, I have a little bit of a confession to make. H.P. Lovecraft, one of the kind of seminal writers in horror fiction, very, very influential, gets name-checked a lot, has a lot of movies based on his work, has a lot of other fiction based on his work, based on his Cthulhu mythos. It's generally weird and cosmic horror. He's kind of one of the innovators, or one of the grandfathers of that genre, which is a genre I love, but I don't actually love the work of H.P. Lovecraft. As a kid, getting into horror fiction, there's this cult around H.P. Lovecraft. If you're any kind of horror scholar, you start looking into this stuff, and the name Lovecraft keeps coming up and coming up and coming up. And when you're a kid and you see these covers with all the art that Lovecraft has inspired, all these these squeamish monsters, and you're thinking, this is gonna be great. And I'm not saying I'm not saying I don't like Lovecraft because I was too young when I attempted to read him. I've tried again and again and again. I even tried very recently with the new annotated H.P. Lovecraft. I got that from Amazon. It's this big, hardcover book, beautiful. I love all the supplementary material. I love all the stuff, biographical stuff about Lovecraft's life. I think he's, an incredibly interesting and controversial figure. I just can't get into the stories. I love things that are derivative of Lovecraft and are picking up his characters and themes and reworking them in more interesting ways. I love that kind of stuff. Clearly, I'm wearing an H.P. Lovecraft inspired shirt. All the works of Stuart Gordon, Cody Goodfellow, Larry Barron. You wouldn't have these artists, you wouldn't have these writers that I really love without Lovecraft. So I understand and I appreciate his contribution, but I don't love his work. I find it kind of boring. I find it kind of overwritten, and it's not a time thing. It's not a stylistic thing. It's just, if you're gonna read similar authors from the time, for me, he doesn't stack up. And that's a terrible thing to say, and I have a ton of, every time I'm selling books at a convention, I'll have kids come up to the table, teenagers. One of my set questions is I ask, oh, what do you like to read? And when they say Lovecraft, not that I'm saying these kids are lying, but sometimes I really think dude, I know you come to horror conventions and you see Lovecraft's name plastered all over the place, but if you're a young reader, if you're not super experienced and you want to find what's good in horror fiction, and you go out and you get one of these millions of reprinted Lovecraft collections and you start reading, you're gonna hit a wall and you're not gonna get the best of what the genre can offer you right off the bat. If that's gonna be your first experience with horror, I'm not knocking the people that do legitimately love his work and do legitimately read his work. It's just an opinion thing. Everyone's entitled to it, but I do feel like Lovecraft kind of is the world's worst gateway to horror. So those are my controversial Lovecraft opinions, getting them out of the way. Someone else who has a mixed relationship with Lovecraft, Victor LaValle. The Ballad of Black Tom is a kind of, makes it sound silly, but a Wicked-esque rewriting of a Lovecraft story, The Horror at Red Hook. The Horror at Red Hook is a really quick short story, kind of like a lesser short story. It doesn't get reprinted in a lot of the big, it's not even in the annotated Lovecraft I mentioned before. Something terrible happening in Red Hook, and in a tenement building that collapses at the end of the story. And half of those 10 pages are like Lovecraft describing how scary he finds immigrants and people of color. So it's definitely not the iconic great Lovecraft story by any means, but LaValle picks that up and writes a kind of alternate version of it where the protagonist is Tommy Tester, who is this this black musician living in Harlem, but he's not really a musician. He understands that he's not the world's greatest musician, so he's more of a hustler. He takes his guitar case around and he, busks and gets money from people that don't know good music from bad music. It's a really cool character, really interesting character. And then around halfway through the book, Tommy makes a decision, which is a kind of classic play on Lovecraft's like mad scientist or mad cultist, someone who's looking to end the world, call forth the elder gods. But Tommy's reasons for doing so are the most justified reasons that any of these protagonists have ever had. And it's really cool because halfway through the book, not trying to talk about it without spoilers, but halfway through the book, we switch perspectives to another character. We switch perspectives to a cop who, Malone, who is, I guess, kind of the protagonist of the original story. But here we see him in a very different light. He's kind of a scumbag. And kind of gets what's coming to him. So that's all I can really talk about with this, because it's, like I said, it's such a short book. It's kind of a jazz-aged Cthulhu adventure with that feels like a full novel because you get a ton of characters, you get a ton of things happening, but just a very small page count, which is the kind of horror I really, really love. I love novellas. I think if you can boil down an 80,000 word novel into a 30,000 word novella, you can and you should. And I think LaValle does that beautifully here. It's a great book. It's something you should definitely pick up. Okay, so the movie I'm recommending to go along with The Ballad of Black Tom is Stuart Gordon and Brian Usna's and Dennis Paoli's From Beyond. Is it's the guys that made Reanimator, the same team and same producers, Empire Pictures. It's kind of the follow-up, even though it's not a sequel, to Reanimator. It's not my favorite Stuart Gordon film, not my favorite Stuart Gordon Lovecraft adaptation, but I paired these two together. This is the Scream Factory Blu-ray that came out, I think a couple years ago now. It's actually kind of old, but it's a great Blu-ray, and I'm pairing them together because these are two pieces of fiction derived from Lovecraft, but I think if you put old Howard in a time travel machine and you plopped him down here and you sat him down with this book and this Blu-ray, he was such a conservative, kind of twitchy guy. I think he would hate both this movie and this book, but I love them. From Beyond is definitely Stuart Gordon's kind of most sexed up H.P. Lovecraft adaptation. It is the pinkest movie the world has ever seen. It has Barbara Crampton, Jeffrey Combs, Ken Foray. I mean, if you're watching videos about horror movies on the internet, you've probably seen this. It's a great movie. It's a lot of fun. It was originally cut to hell by the MPAA when it came out, but the release before this, MGM found all the negatives and put all the gore back in, so you can now watch it in its gooey best. Really, really fun. So after you're done reading The Ballad of Black Tom, plunk in From Beyond, grab a beer, tip one out for HPL, and whether you're a fan of his or not, and just kind of enjoy these two things that wouldn't have existed without Lovecraft, even if you're like me and you're not the biggest fan. All right, that was this week's Project Black t-shirt. If you like this video, give it a like, hit subscribe down below. And if you didn't like this video, tell me why in the comments. Tell me why I'm wrong about H.P. Lovecraft. Tell me the best Lovecraft story, the best Lovecraft adaptation. I want to hear, I want to be convinced. Like I said, I want to believe, but maybe it's just not for me. I've gotten this far in my life. All right, see you guys.